My guest tonight is Wale Adenuga, the popular worship artist.
I lift up my voice in praise.
And he talks to us about the heart of true worship. This is Chim Talk Africa. Please like this video and leave a comment below. Let's know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell button and share this video with someone.
From Cape Town to Cairo and from Mogadishu to Dakar, this is Chim's Talk Africa. And now here's your host, Chim Onyibilanma.
Welcome, dear viewers, to this segment of your show. Like I said in the beginning, my guest today is a very well-known worship artist all across his country, Nigeria, as well as in many parts of Africa and also out to Europe. Wale, you're welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Chim, for having me today.
Wale Adenuga is you're known for your most popular song, Today,
right,
that we played at the beginning of we played just before we came to this segment. It came out of a trying situation, didn't it?
It did.
And
It did.
Tell us a bit about that.
So at a point in time, I think it was 1987, my family and I lived in a university campus in a town called Ife, and our house got burnt down. We lost absolutely everything. And at that point in time, no one was a Christian in the family. We only went to church 3 times a year, on Christmas Day, Easter Sunday, and New Year's Day. And a year after I got born again a year after, and I was coming back to visit my parents, I think about 3 years after, and I was in a car, in a taxi. And the words just came to me. Today I will lift up my voice in praise, basically as a vow to God, saying to him that no matter what I face, even when troubles come my way, I will praise him.
That's the part I like most. My children will attest to you that I play that song and I just go, no matter what I face, when trouble comes my way, I will praise you, Lord.
Yeah.
That for you was a sign of gratitude for what God had taken your family through at that point.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
you were looking back and saying, trials may come, but praise should not cease.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how do you see the landscape in Africa? When you look at the worship we have in our churches, sometimes I'm concerned about depth. I'm concerned about how much are we pressing into deep things.
Right.
Because there's a part of worship helping to steer us up, but there's also the part of worship building us up.
Right.
Do you get where I'm going to with this?
I think I do. I think the challenge we have in Africa is, let me use Nigeria as an example where I live, is we're so encumbered with, challenges, poverty, and very dire circumstances that sometimes, rather than even allowing God to use us, we are more concerned about using God, to help solve our problems. And so sometimes a lot of the songs that we write do not rise above those kind of circumstances. So sometimes if you want to write a song about how God is beautiful, hey, I've not even solved my problem, before I start seeing how beautiful God is. Maybe when my problem is solved, I'll know how beautiful God is. So I think that's where we're still at, with respect to a lot of, we're talking about God, putting butter on my bread and putting sugar in my tea.
I'll get my breakthrough now.
My breakthrough now. So I think that's the level at which we're at with the gospel and, again, by direct influence with our songwriting.
But is it a process now? You're saying that we have to now wait till the time when our problems are sorted, when we have our breakthroughs and finances are good before we now start talking about big things like the glory of God, the beauty of God, and because that's really worship in my understanding.
Absolutely.
Worship is not, there is a part of, you read through the Psalms, there should be a part of encouraging us in the thing we call worship or praise in our church. There should be songs of confession. There's a place for that. There's a place of saying, God will help me, God will save me.
Yes.
But there is also worship, which is the place of exalting God, of magnifying his beauty, making him big with our songs. Do we wait till we get all this sorted out before we come to this place, or should it be happening side by side?
Well, I think it's our songwriting, again, like I said, is a direct reflection of maybe what is even coming out from the pulpit.
Okay.
As long as the church leaders focus, and if 80% to 90% of what is being preached is focusing on problems, focusing on witchcraft, and
so part of the problem is our pulpit.
Yes.
I was listening to your podcast or the video
on YouTube,
on YouTube, the training you gave about worshiping from a place of brokenness. Mm-hmm. That was quite inspiring for me. Yeah. But it's a series of teachings you give in terms of where the heart of worship is. Could you tell us a bit about this worshiping from a place of brokenness?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in churches, and I think this is all over, is that talent is now being placed over the state of the heart. But the truth of the matter is that talent is not enough. I think God would rather use a broken heart than a great talent, and that's exactly what I'm trying to communicate. That I've been in a place where I had the talent, and the talent actually failed me. I really couldn't help, so I really couldn't help the people until God actually, I was broken, and God could actually use me to do the things that I'm doing today. So, and that's exactly what I'm trying to communicate, that yes, you can sing, you can play music and all of those things, but God, someone said it is the anointing that breaks the yoke, not skill. While we're not discounting on the skill, but we must also place emphasis on what God wants to, so that's what I would have to say.
Well, we'll take a break now, but I'm returning on this because I just feel that people like you have such a power to influence the church in Africa. Our worship songwriters. Yeah. These songs cross barriers. You write a song in Kenya, it's being sung in Nigeria. You write one in Nigeria like yours, is sung in Botswana. It's as powerful as that. Absolutely. So for us returning on this over and over again is just to emphasize this point. Yeah. Their audience in the studio and our viewers at home, this is where we'll take a short break. And when we come back, we would ask our guest, Wale Adenuga, to do one of his songs, and we'll continue with this conversation. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
I have been through many troubles, but of a truth, my Lord has been good to me. I have been to many places, but it's in Jesus that my joy gets to me full. Story of my life. The story of your life as well. I have been through many troubles, but of a truth, my Lord has been good to me. I have been to many places, but it's in Jesus that my joy gets to be full. Oh, everybody join me and sing this song. What the Lord has
Welcome back, viewers, and what a beautiful song that was. And we are in the studio with Wale Adenuga. Thank you for that song.
Thanks so much.
It's one of those songs to have sung over and over again.
Yeah.
Wale, we have just a short time left, but I want to talk about what you've been doing recently. There is something you started a few years ago called Worship for Change.
Correct.
It's basically a charitable movement. It's
Yes.
a philanthropic initiative you started using worship.
Yeah.
Why did you start this? Where did this inspiration come from?
I mean, it all came from the fact that I think it was Jesus who said, you can't really say that you love me if you don't love your fellow human beings, the men that you see around. And Nigeria is where I live. We have lots of challenges, lots of orphanages, and they need help. So one of the things that God laid on my heart was to start a worship concert to raise awareness and support for orphans and children with special needs. And we've been doing it for like 10 years. We haven't raised a lot of money, but for now, we've raised about $100,000 to help, like.
$100,000 is a lot of money.
I mean, we could do more, but for each of those charities, you give them $5,000. I don't think there's anyone that you've given that amount of money to. They just break down in tears, because they're going through a lot. And so that's exactly what we've done over the past few years.
And this initiative, we'll look at a clip right now. Now, this initiative has also led to you starting last year a kind of it's a CD or
Right.
Tell us a bit about the Green Worship Initiative.
Yeah, so what we did with the Green Worship, we had done Worship for Change for 10 years. And the format for Worship for Change was we had just had a concert, people came in and we took pledges and people gave towards these charities. But then we felt that we should take it a notch higher. So we had this concert where we had top gospel artists in Nigeria, Nathan Abasi, Pernan Persipal, and we all came together and had a live recording. And all of them performed for free. And the idea is to sell that CD and raise, well, 150 million naira. In dollar terms, that's like $400,000 for 5 different charities. Down Syndrome Foundation, Cerebral Palsy, there's a center called Patrick Speech and Language Center. They deal with autistic children. Leprosy Mission Nigeria, and Lady Atinuke Oyindamola Center, somewhere in Badagry in Lagos. So we're selling that CD and to raise that amount of funds for these 5 different charities.
Who do you listen to, Wale, when you want to listen to a worship album? What do you play on your iPhone? What do you play in your car?
Currently, I'm listening to so I think the song of the moment for me right now is New Wine by Hillsong. That because I think that's the state where I am right now. I want God to break me further and bring new wine out of me. So that's what I'm listening to right now.
Thank you so much, Wale. I'm going to turn to the audience and find out if we have comments or questions on what we've been talking about.
If you would go back 10 years, what would you tell yourself from 10 years ago based on what you know today?
I think one of the greatest lessons I've learned in life, which is not what I've talked about today, is that I probably would have taken my relationships more seriously. Yeah, that's one of the greatest lessons I've learned in life. Because I've come to realize that after God, relationships with people are extremely important. you know. Creative people sometimes are people who just like to just remain in their space, in their own, just do your own thing, you know. And yeah, so that's that for me is the greatest lesson I've learned. And I wish I knew that 10 years ago.
So, dear viewers, this is where we draw the curtain on this segment of the show. We've been talking to Wale Adenuga, a popular songwriter and worship leader from Nigeria. Wale has been speaking to us about the issue of worship in the church, and that's been quite insightful. Thank you so much, Wale.
Thanks so much, Chim.
We look forward to many more of these initiatives coming out from you. Thanks to our studio audience and to those of you who have been watching us from home. This is where we'll draw the curtains on this segment. And thank you so much for being with us. But like we said, you can go to the website on the screen and you can get all the information you need about the Worship for Change initiative that Wale Adenuga is involved in. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye. Hi there, and welcome back. I trust that you were challenged by that interview with one of my favorite artists, Wale Adenuga. That was an interview we did some years back. Now, before we close today, I want to bring you a challenge of the situation of evangelism in Europe. And joining me by Zoom is a friend and a missionary, somebody who is working in France, reaching out to those who have not yet heard the gospel. Charles Bavoloni, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Chim.
Tell me, Charles, you are there in France. What is the spiritual climate of Europe like today?
Well, thank you for this discussion. As you know, from Europe, the gospel went to Africa and other continents several years back, some centuries back. But it looks like Europe now has become the darkest continent in the world in terms of the gospel. And I believe that God is going to do something else, change the situation. But yes, spiritually speaking, in terms of the gospel, Europe needs the light of the gospel right now. There is a great need for the gospel to come back to where it went to several other countries centuries back.
I see. Now, Charles, can you give us an idea of the statistics of, just to get an idea of what the state of evangelism is in Europe or in France?
Thanks. Just some few days back, we were told that France is now 68 million population. And we know that of this, less than 1% is Christian. So it's a great need. France actually is a mission field. Less than 1% of 68 million can be seen as Christian.
Wow, that's massive. Less than 1% in a place like France that some centuries ago used to send out missionary. In your opinion, why is Europe in the state it is today spiritually?
Yeah, I think that several years of the gospel or the message of the gospel being watered down has brought Europe and France in particular to where we are right now. We need to uphold the message of the gospel. Paul says that this is what saves. Is it the gospel is the power of God for the salvation of whoever, whether Jew or not, whoever, is the message of the gospel. It was what saves. And when we now begin to divert into other things, and it's what happened centuries back, the church diverted into other things, several other things, religion and other things, and that watered down the gospel. And so we need to come back to the basics of the gospel. What saves, what brings salvation is the message of the gospel. Christ died, buried, rose from the dead. The power of that is what brings salvation. And what will touch Europe is coming back to this gospel, this simplicity of the gospel message.
Charles, I know that for centuries, a lot of cathedrals and beautiful, massive buildings, churches, buildings were built all around Europe. And today we see those buildings everywhere, but we don't find people in them. What do you think is a lesson in all of that for us today?
Yeah, we need to build men and not to build just structures. We need to build men. And that's what Christ did. Jesus built men. The men that were around, that were with him, he built them. He told Peter, I will make you fishers of men. So it's a making of men and women that will stand for Christ, not just investing huge amount of money in building structures. Why we don't raise men, build them to the character of Christ, we will end up the way Europe is now. Although I have hope that God will turn things around.
Charles, there is a lot of Africans rushing into Europe, as you know. And how, in your opinion, how do you see this influx of Africans into Europe in light of the big spiritual need of Europe?
I believe that if the African church was really mission-minded and geared towards the salvation of Europe or the Western world in general, when African believers are moving to Europe or any of these Western nations, we will make them see themselves as missionaries. You are not just going there for economic reasons. You are going there taking the gospel to them. You are going to work. Yes, they will pay you to preach the gospel. But unfortunately, most African leaders preparing an African believer going to a Western country is more of the economic reasons, the economic factor that you are going to benefit than going to take the gospel there. But if the African church was to prepare, equip those going to the Western world from Africa, probably for economic reasons, but also to see themselves as missionaries taking the gospel, that would have made a big difference. But some of them come over, even lose their faith in pursuit of economic factors. And those that are able to keep their faith, they don't really see themselves as missionaries. Yes, we have several churches planted by Africans in Europe, but that missionary factor of coming over to bring Europeans back to Christ, back to the gospel, it's yet to really be seen as a vision for the African church and African believers coming over to Europe.
Charles, there's also the large influx of people from the Muslim world like never before, refugees from the Arab world pouring into Europe. How important is it to reach these ones in Europe?
Well, since 2014, as we all saw in the news, many people poured in from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and all that. So yes, we have many immigrants from these nations, Africa as well, Sudan and other sub-Saharan African nations. In France, there have always been people from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, some of these French-speaking North African nations. They've been here for many years. But then these last days, we've had people pouring from Sudan, Eritrea, and other sub-Saharan African nations. Yeah, so there is the need to really reach out to these immigrants who have come from Iraq, Syria, Sudan, or all these nations for whatever reasons they came in, either because of the war or for other economic factors. There is a great need to touch these people with the gospel.
As we wrap up, Charles, speak to our viewers. In the light of the challenge of evangelism in Europe, what can one do?
Well, anytime we talk about the gospel and what we can do, I think the first thing is to pray. That's what the Lord said. Pray the Lord of the harvest. So yeah, I think we need to begin to look at Europe as a mission field. And then the invitation from the Lord is pray the Lord of the harvest. And the next thing is to pray that he will send laborers into the harvest field. And I believe some African believers can't really be called into this harvest field, but coming with a vision of seeing lives saved, not just for economic factors, but with a vision of bringing souls into the gospel. So pray and consider if God will call you, why not come join the harvest field? For the harvest is truly plentiful in Europe.
Thank you so much, Charles, for joining me today and sharing this insight about Europe with us. That's Charles Bavaloni, who is a missionary in France, winning souls for Christ over there. And if you've heard him, maybe you want to give, maybe you want to go, maybe you want to pray for the harvest field in Europe, please use the contact on the screen and we'll send you the information you need today. Truly, it's harvest time in Europe. Now, this is where we'll say bye-bye for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you same station, same time next week.
Please like this video and leave a comment below. Let's know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell button and share this video with somebody else.